Okay, well, I decided to come out here because um, I'm going to tell you a story here. Um, this mall that's here, you can see, this wasn't here back when this story happened. Um, this mall opened in 1975, and I remember when this mall opened, we came up from Perth to Smiths Falls to come to the mall because it was a big deal to have a shopping mall. you know, shopping malls just weren't a thing around here. They were kind of a city thing. Anyway, but across this road, there was a little store. It was a little grocery store called Johnny Giff's Grocery. It was called Giff's Grocery, but the fellow who ran it was Johnny Giff. And Johnny Giff, he had he it had been he and his brother who ran the store, and his brother was shot to death in the store during a robbery. So Johnny was left running the store by himself. Johnny lived upstairs. There was an apartment above the store. That's where he lived. And downstairs, he ran the grocery store. They also had gas pumps. It was kind of a general store is what it was. Anyway, when this mall opened, where the Food Basics store is now, that at that time that was called the A&P store, the Great Atlantic and Pacific Tea Company store. And they put Johnny out of business anyway. He couldn't compete with them. But basically, Johnny had turned to the drink because, of course, it was a tough thing for him to cope, having lost his brother in that store, and now he was in there running the place every day. So, anyway, I'll show you real quick here, the building at least. Oh my goodness, hey. There's the building. I don't know if we're going to be able to see it very well or not. There's big snowbanks, as you can see here. Huge snowbanks. I think I may have to do some mountain climbing on this one. Okay, now. Okay. Yeah, there used to be gas pumps out front and everything. But that's the building there. At that time, it was, they didn't have the siding on it. It was just a cinder block building. And around the top of the building, there was a green stripe. I remember that. Anyway, my dad was a friend of the man who owned it, a fellow by the name of Johnny Giff. And like I say, the man whose brother had been tragically murdered in there. Robbery. And in those days, to have that kind of a problem where you were, excessively consuming alcohol was kind of a stigmatizing thing. A lot of people had that issue, but it wasn't something that you wanted to admit to, especially if you were running a business. And so, in order so that Johnny could do his drinking, so he could cope with the situation and not have to be seen, buying alcohol down at the Liquor Control Board store, buying alcohol. My dad used to stop in Perth on his way home from work, because my dad worked at a wool factory in Perth in those days, which he eventually ended up having to leave that position because they tried to get a union in there, and my dad was actually the head of the union. And the Ontario Provincial Police basically put a stop to that by harassing people and everything. And so, anyway, my dad got blacklisted. He got fired for union agitating and blacklisted, basically. And then he had to go and work at the shoe factory where he could get in because my grandpa was the electrical engineer there, his dad, which he didn't want to do. He didn't want to work at the shoe factory, but, a man had to earn a living, so he did what he had to do. But getting back to my story anyway, my dad used to stop at the Liquor Control Board store in Perth, and he would buy 2 great big bottles of whiskey. I don't know what kind of whiskey it was, but they were big glass bottles. And he would give those bottles to Johnny on our way home, because we lived in a trailer park up here called Charlie Anderson's Trailer Park, just a stone's throw from here. So he'd stop in there and on his way home, and he'd leave the 2 bottles with Johnny. I'm sure my dad probably was making a bit of a profit on the deal as well, you know, doing a little bootlegging. But I used to be with my dad when he'd come home, because it had been decided, because all the kids are in the trailer park where we were already in school, other than a couple of them, the rest were all in school. And so it was decided, because I was kind of lonely, if the 2 that were still around were busy or away or whatever, so it was decided that I would go attend the daycare center in Perth so that I could have some friends there. And so my dad used to bring me with him when he'd go to work and drop me off at the daycare center and then pick me up on his way home. My dad didn't want me to know about his bootlegging, and I don't think he wanted my mom to know about it either. So he used to tell me that those 2 bottles were full of maple syrup. And he used to call the Liquor Control Board store the maple syrup store. And when we'd stop at Johnny Gift's grocery store there to give him his bottles, this was back in like 1971, he used to buy me a Kit Kat chocolate bar as a kind of a bribe. He'd say, "No, don't tell your mother about the maple syrup." You know? And I remember I always wondered, like, that guy's going through an awful lot of maple syrup. I couldn't figure out, even as a little kid, how anybody could possibly use that much maple syrup. But I believe my dad that it was maple syrup anyway, but I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't understand how he was managing to use that much of the stuff. Anyway, that's the story. Like I say, when the mall opened up here in 1975, it put Johnny right out of business anyway. And then that building sat empty for a while, and there was an aluminum siding business in there after that. But yeah, anyway, that's the story. Just another story I remember from when I was a kid. We talk to you later. Here we go. I'll give a picture of the mall here. The store on the very end was a Zeller's store, but of course all the Zeller's stores went under. They went defunct, so it's just been an empty store ever since. All right, talk to you later.